And I am going to, do I want to share my screen? Yeah, I'll share my screen. Give me a second here. Who can start? Okay. Share screen. Okay. I'm going to just like leave it the way it is so that I don't have to go in and out of my screen. But and Mick will share his screen with us when I'm done with this little spiel here. But we will refresh our minds with all of this for the course. But we have a guest speaker today, which I'm really excited to welcome. And I found Mick online through Instagram years ago, I think, maybe 3 years ago now, in my search to understand more about log hives and the rewilding of honeybees. I have spoken about someone who I really appreciate, Mick, who is a bee enthusiast who lives in Northern California. And I met him, let's see, probably 7 years ago. I took a biodynamic workshop with him on beekeeping. And his approach to the bees was completely different than anything I had heard up until that point. Of course, I had attended workshops on natural beekeeping and, you know, beekeeping with less intensity or hands involved. But his the way that he spoke about the bees was not just poetic, but was truly like a mind-altering experience. And that's like the best way I can describe it. We spent 2 days together with the other workshop participants in this beautiful nature preserve outside of San Francisco. And not only was he telling us about the bees, but he gave us these activities to kind of like immerse ourselves into the feelings of bees and the consciousness that they possess, which is like not just in this reality, but in like the ethereal realms as well. So Michael was the one that introduced me to log hives and the work of putting bees back into their home, their real home. And through that desire to learn more, I found Boom Tree Bees. And I have really appreciated the work that Mick has done. It is deeply rooted in research and conservation and education. And I'm so excited to have you here with us today. It feels kind of like a long time coming. And so this is his website. I will share his information with you, contact information at the close of our, actually I'll share it in the classroom so it's easy. But I'm going to turn it over to him so he can share with us about himself. And he has a nice presentation to share with us about the work he's doing in Ireland. So I'm going to stop my screen and you can take over.
Very good. Just to step in there on what you're saying at the end, like I said, there might be a possibility that I'm talking to a few people at the moment about setting up a little pilot project in America.
Yay.
So we're looking to do like a solid week hands-on, where we're going to look at an overall picture, not just bees, but the whole landscape, and obviously get proper experts involved, like that are on working on the ground, like and do some proper workshops with those, and then obviously tie it all back into colony health, like, and obviously landscape, the way we have to manage it and everything.
Mhm.
So yes, I'm working on it. So I probably have a location already, and I think the funding is nearly organized. So now it's just for me to sit down and actually draft a good agenda, like for a week.
Great. Well, I'm going to try and convince you to do another week over here too after.
Oh, so you can come along now because we're gonna leave it open for everyone.
Cool.
But it's finding a suitable location, because what I find is, like, especially with those kind of things, when you say people like yourselves, like, that are going into beekeeping and everything, like, it's absolutely no point like me coming from a perfect angle where you have a beautiful nature reserve and you're looking at bees there. You're going to have to start at the point where the normal people that keep bees, where the problems are in the landscape. And obviously there you're going to have to start looking at it, and obviously get experts in and see how that can be resolved, like how you can fix those things.
Mhm.
And in the long run, like, you could transfer that information into your beekeeping practices as well. So that's what I'm trying to kind of toy with the idea now, where would be a good location. Obviously you don't want to go too extreme either, that is just all misery, like in the landscape, like, but kind of like a middle ground somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that at the moment. So probably have a bit more information probably in about a month's time or something.
Cool.
So we'll let you know anyway what happens.
Okay.
But it looks then like it'll be 3 or 4 will be coming over from this direction.
Perfect.
So that should be interesting. Let's see. Right, can you see that all right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Good on my
perfect.
end. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for the introduction. So as was said, my name is Mick. I'm in Ireland here now for a long time. I'm originally from Holland, where I studied forestry landscape management, and I did that in 94, 94 to 98. And then throughout that period, I was very lucky enough, like with my studies, that I was able to travel throughout Europe as part of the studies, that where I was able to do different semesters in different countries. So it was all like practical based, like all project based, like my studies. So it was ideal for me, like, to be able to pick up different practices and different types of landscape all throughout Europe, like, and obviously be able to see then as well, like, what issues arise, like, in different types of landscape. And that always kind of stayed with me. And then as the time kind of progressed, like, and I finished my studies, I eventually ended up here in Ireland, and I found like this was a good point where to actually start doing something about it. Because the time I came here was in '99. It was absolutely bleak. The practices over here was shocking, and I thought like it would be a good starting point to begin here. So I started off like in a forestry and landscape contracting business. I covered most of the national parks where we did all the maintenance works. We did a lot of planting as well, like for the larger forestry companies. And during those times, like, I was absolutely shocked and appalled the way they went about it. It's little like almost like a, well, I would say it's like nearly 100-year-old kind of way, like, of thinking, the way they plan their forest and the way they manage the forests. I grew up, I was during my studies, like, I was taught like it was all on an individual tree basis, where you plan ahead. So yeah, I definitely wanted to change that, and obviously with that, I saw the serious amount of destruction that was done just from the forestry side of it. So eventually, then in when was that 2006, I kind of drifted away from that due to the recession. We were the first one to get hit really badly because obviously all my work like was through the government. It was all funded through the government, and we were the first ones to get axed completely. So yeah, I drifted away from that, and obviously I kind of changed fields. So I went into agriculture, and it was all organic. So I moved where I was based first, like in the middle of the country, near Galway, and then I moved all the way up to the north, in a tiny little area, like a little peninsula. That's where I'm based now at the moment. So the town is called Buncrana, and I live on like a peninsula. And I started working there for an organic farm that was probably about maybe 2-3 years in. They were just getting their feet on the ground, and I was asked then to kind of make it more profitable because at the time it wasn't really. And I found really quickly like there was huge issues with pollination, like especially earlier on in the season, especially the earlier crops, they had big difficulties. So I started looking into that and trying to make the land more attractive. So we covered, do you work in acres or in hectares?
In acres.
Acres, right? Okay. So in total, the farm was 35 acres, all organic veg and fruit. So I started initially off like with planting all the boundaries, just with pollinating plants, trees, shrubs, everything, as much as I could, just to attract them in. And then probably within 2 seasons, I could see the difference already starting to happen. I started to create like proper habitat then as well, like for nesting sites, especially for bumblebees, where we'd have like leaf little areas, but we throw underneath hedges. So the amount like of actually nesting bumblebees like on the farm like increased 10-20 fold, was absolutely phenomenal. And from there on, there it was only kind of more proper management in. So I started up like a proper box scheme where we supplied just households. We started off very small with about 40 households, and by the time I left, we covered 210 households every week. And with that, then we supplied 6 or 7 restaurants, and we did like twice a week a market garden as well.
It's a lot of vegetables.
Yeah, it's a lot of veg, yeah. And it was only 4 of us that worked on the farm. Yeah.
I don't know how you do that. That's okay. Very humbling for me over here.
It's literally down to planning. Real good planning. It's all about timing. I always say when you work in a vegetable garden, the minute you see a weed, you're too late. A lot of people make that mistake when they start growing vegetables, like and they prepare the ground really beautiful, and it's all nicely tilled, plant their veg, and then all of a sudden they sit back like once the seed is in the ground, or replanted in the ground, and then all of a sudden you notice the tiny little green head starting to stick up, and then you've lost already. It's just a losing battle from then on. So it's see when you really want to do it properly, like yeah, it's intensive work, but it's very rewarding, yeah, for sure. But yeah, so from there, obviously my interest in bees kind of increased, and pure by, I don't know what we'll call it, faith or luck, I ended up inheriting 2 colonies of bees. A real good friend of mine, he was a beekeeper for about 40 years. He suddenly passed away, and it was his wife then that came up to me, and she said that I was the right person to take on those beehives. So then obviously I was had a bit of an issue because I had no proper understanding of bees at all. So I did like a crash course in beekeeping, where I literally went to the closest beekeeping or club that I could find, and I had a couple of mentors like helping me out, and obviously throughout that process, then like once I got the hives kind of stabilized, because by the time I got it, when I received them, like they were very not very looked after. There were definitely lots of viruses and problems in them, and I started to address them very rapidly. And then as that kind of progressed, I found that the questions I started to ask, like they weren't getting answered at all. So I kind of drifted away. Probably within 2 seasons, I drifted away like from the beekeeping club, and started looking for more alternatives. Because obviously, because of my background, like in landscape management, conservation works, I wanted to do as best as I could for those bees. Yeah, I'm just going to close that because the sun is actually beaming through the window. That's a bit better. So I started looking for alternatives, that I actually came across then real old style beekeeping that was done at that time, like in Eastern Europe, where for literally for centuries they have been keeping bees like in logs. It's just different kind of a style, but obviously it was very appealing to me. Like, and from there on, I kind of looked in ways like where we could steer more into conservation work. So that's how I started up then. Boom Tree Bees started that in, when was that, 2017, where I really got into it then. Like, and obviously I had at that stage, well, what I thought anyway, enough information and knowledge to be able to kick it off properly. But very rapidly I found I had no knowledge at all. So I assume he's going to be the same, and obviously I'm not really sure what the format is of your apprenticeship. But the more you delve into bees, the more you're going to see and the more questions there's going to be. And just to let you know, on some of those questions, you'll never get answers. And I think it's actually a good way to be. You might observe something and you'll have a question on it, like, and you might never find out. But those observations are absolutely key for long-term experience. When you're trying to manage hives, you make sure you keep reminding yourself like of all the different things you've seen over the time. We'll be chatting a little bit as well, like on different types of observations that I've seen, and maybe we're going to have a little bit of a discussion then at the end. Maybe there's things that you've seen, like, and maybe vice versa, that might be able to help each other out a bit. So once I started up, like, I did a lot of educational work, where I initially started off like teaching primary schools and secondary schools. Did a lot of work to that. Moved kind of on, like, wanted to kind of get more momentum, so I went to local government level and trying to convince those in the government, like, to get more awareness. So my initial project was like with our own, it's like a province here, like, and I had to teach what was it, 128 staff members of the council. So I had to do that, the whole program, probably spaced out over about 2 years, and from now I can actually see real good an outcome from it, because obviously they had no knowledge whatsoever on honeybees and proper landscape management, but they're starting to proper implement now corridors where they starting to connect up fragmented land, like in Ireland, through the towns, through the cities as well, and it's improving all the time. we have here like a to do like an award system here as well, like every year, where you get all over the country where they go into local towns and villages, and they'll give like a reward like on biodiversity, they give the award on tidiness and on proper landscape management. And now our local town here now has won it 3 times. Yeah, the last 3 years they've won it. Then they're really kind of almost like a pilot project now, like for the rest of the country. So where the rest of the country all comes here to see what is happening, like and how they can improve it as well. So it's definitely making a an impact. But yeah, so from that, sort of for the first couple of years, like of when I started up Boom Tree Bees, like the first thing I kind of focused on, because obviously our landscape is very, very fragmented. We're down to, I think it's 1% of native woodland. The rest is all disappeared, been cut away over the last centuries. Maybe in total, like we might have about 12% of a forest cover, but of that 12%, over 10% like is plantation, and it's all coniferous, unfortunately. And obviously those are absolutely no good like for proper bee habitat. So yes, I started up like putting out lots of hives, so lots of conservation log hives that I was putting out all over the countryside. I think at the moment, like we're at about 410, 411 or something like that. I think we have out. So for myself, like I have 240 put up for this project. I'll chat to that in a little bit more, like on those conservation areas. That followed on then, once I had them up like for a couple of years, the universities and the research side, like they got interested, because obviously I had like a unique situation here where I had all these free living colonies, and they wanted to start monitoring properly and trying to maybe answer some of the questions they had. So yes, that's what we're involved in at the moment. Like I'll go into that as well. Like habitat creation, just beside obviously the hives that I make, like we're involved now as well, like in doing a lot of large scale landscaping, like big projects where I wouldn't call it rewilding, but where we provide like proper plant materials or create meadows again. Because I assume it's going to be the same kind of a situation where you are, like your proper meadows like have disappeared like over the last 30, 40 years, and you're just left with probably ryegrass fields, where there's absolutely no nutrition in it whatsoever. Like I call them like pure deserts, unfortunately. So we're doing that like along with education, like we're going into farmers, landowners, and see if we can start improving that as well. So those are the kind of areas that we're covering. So this is a little map then, where you can see right at the bottom of that kind of yellow shape. This is the town where I live. So this is my focus area. The hives, like not all the hives are in this area, but that whole peninsula, you can kind of see the outline. I don't know, can you see the pointer if I pointed it out?
Yes.
The pointer, so it starts in Buncrana, goes all the way around, all the way to the top. So this here is the furthest point in Ireland. You can't go any higher. And then it comes around the side here and back here again. So it's a real nice peninsula. So I kind of have like in a unique situation, because I'm completely surrounded by water everywhere. So initially, because obviously I didn't want to take on the whole area, because for one person it's just too much. But the area there in yellow, what I'm working on, like it's still 120 square kilometers. So it's still a vast area, like just to be able to work on that. So I started off like just taking an inventory, see what's there. Went to every single beekeeper that I could find, Literally walk the hedgerows, the tiny little pockets of woodland that's left, like just to see if there was any bees left at all, wild ones. And up to now, like I managed to find 25 wild colonies, and within that area we have 50 managed colonies by 13 beekeepers. So I work very closely with those beekeepers. Anytime they have any problems, they come to me. I try to help them as good as I can. I supply them with bees as well. So these beekeepers, like if they even have colony losses, I supply them with free bees because I have so many colonies of bees myself. On an average year, like I end up about 440, maybe 150 swarms. So I have plenty to give away. And this was the whole idea, like about the conservation area, is to have like a situation where everyone in the area can benefit from it. This is including obviously the farmers and the people that have their own private gardens, local government as well. Like so, the whole everything kind of ties in properly. So that was my original vision, where I could just have something in place and be able to hand it back then over time once it's already there. Like, and obviously we can start addressing the real problems, because obviously putting up log hives, like it's a great thing, but it's an only temporary solution. Because obviously we have to start addressing the larger landscape. And then even though it might look, that picture there might look very green, there's very little trees left on that land. Like you'll see a little bit there on the bottom of the picture, you'll see a couple of dark green blotches, but that's all plantation. And the rest is just sporadic hedgerow trees and hedgerows, and maybe odd wee remnant here or there, like of a little bit of trees, whatever. So yeah, so focusing on that, and with that, like I needed extra help, and obviously because, as I said, like I can't do this all on my own. Like so, there's like a Native Irish Honeybee Society in Ireland. So I collaborated with them. They helped me out, and I helped them out. These are all the society, like it's about to protect our native Irish honeybee. So we still have pure Apis mellifera here in Ireland in pockets, and they're trying to increase those pockets and obviously make them larger. So I've collaborated with them now. I supply them data from my hives because obviously they're looking to see like what are the impacts of imports from different countries, like by beekeepers, where they're importing colonies, say from Italy or whatever it is, to see like if it has like a long-term effect like on the local genetic. So we're trying to kind of stabilize that, and to, let's see, can I go back on this? I can, yeah. To go back on that, like, and this is one of the reasons, the key reasons, like why I picked this area to start off with. As you can see here in the picture on the left-hand side from Buncrana, it mightn't look, but this is all water here, all the way down. So I have nearly two sides, I'm completely covered by water, where I have enough of a distance so I don't have any impact of any bees on the other side. This section here is probably 2 miles wide, and I've never seen bees actually crossing that area at all. So the only kind of area I have to focus on is this boundary here. And I have lots of like stations set out, like where anything that trying to ingress into the area, I catch it. Any swarm that's trying to come across, I catch it out. Like, and if I find there is like an issue with genetics, like it's banding in it, I just change them out straight away. So I'm trying to keep this as clean as I can. There's a couple of issues in there, but I just have to deal with them, because even though they might be a bit of color, So they mightn't be pure AMM. They're still like a living organism, like, and I know like over time at some point those bees are, for whatever reason, like the colony is going to perish at some point. But I just don't want to go in there and actually just kill it outright. So I just manage those sites very closely. Any swarms that do come off them, I catch them. I make sure they get sampled, and then I just merge them then with other colonies. So obviously not to lose those swarms. They can supplement like other swarms that mightn't be as strong. So there's ongoing work there all the time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How far of a drive is that, just so we can get an understanding of like the distance, and how frequently are you visiting those boundary sites on the right side? Are you there like every week, every other day, or?
Well, at the moment, as I said earlier on, just before we started off, like our swarming season is just about to kick off, and obviously, in say the start of the year until now, there's no reason for me to be there at all. But probably in the next week, I'll be putting out probably 60, 70 bait boxes along that line to catch as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few key points where I know like they're within say 2 mile of those of that boundary. There might be beekeepers, so there is chances of something drifting across, and I want to make sure that I catch them.
Wow.
So yes, the area, probably the whole perimeter. I think it was given there, wasn't it? See if we can move this a bit here. So the perimeter there is almost 50 kilometers of the yellow line. So that gives you a rough.
Oh,
so from here, roughly to there, it's about 25 kilometers.
For some reason, I have this like gray box covering your metrics there. So I'm sorry, I didn't see that before.
Yeah, no. So it says the perimeter. The perimeter is almost 50 kilometers,
Okay.
and the total area is 120 kilometers,
Okay.
square
Thank
kilometers.
You.
Yeah. So yeah, there is work, and obviously once these boxes go up, especially in the first week or two, I would just do maybe every couple of days. I drive. It's just literally one single road, so I can just have the quick stops here and there. I only have to watch like if there's any activity at all. So each stop probably takes me a minute, 2 minutes, and there's even points in it where I can just literally stop on the road and just look. I can see them in the distance, use a pair of binoculars or something, like, so I kind of have them strategic place as well, like, so it's cost me less time as well. But yes, there's definitely work involved, especially once the swarming season starts. It gets really busy. Surely does. But yes, so as I said already, like very busy with landowners as well, because obviously we're trying to improve the forage like for bees. So there is smaller initiatives here, like in the peninsula. I work closely with them. If I speak to a landowner that says like, oh, I wouldn't mind like maybe to bring back like an old hedgerow or something, or plant a new one. I speak with those initiatives, like, because they do like a special earlier on in the season, like say February, March, they do like a couple of weeks where they're looking for land like to plant. They get funding like from the government, where they can buy purchase trees and shrubs. So while I'm speaking to those landowners and farmers, the minute they say to me, yes, I would be interested in that at all. The way I put it in, like, so I can arrange this for free, so it's not going to cost them anything. Because obviously, for anything like that, a farmer like wants to have minimal cost where possible, and obviously time as well. So there's actually like a volunteer organization then that comes in with a whole group of people, and then spend maybe 3 or 4 hours on one person's land and plants up a whole hedgerow. The only thing the farmer has to do then is to fence it off, like, so the livestock doesn't get at it. So we've been doing this now for 4 or 5 years, and it's really starting to take a good effect. Like you'll see, because over here for a long time, what happened was that all the old hedgerows, they were getting cut away and replaced with barbed wire fences. And obviously it's just related like with the size like of the farm, the size of the farm, they start to increase, but the manpower on those farms, they start to reduce. So the farmer just looked for the quickest solution to be able to manage that. And obviously one of those things was to remove the hedgerows, because obviously otherwise you had to go in and clip those hedges every year. So we're starting to bring those back, because obviously we give, I supply like the landowners like with lots of information like on the good purposes like of hedgerows, like and how beneficial it is to the land itself, and obviously whatever crop he grows on it. Because I don't know if you know, if you have a boundary like of a hedgerow, especially a flowering hedgerow, just from the protection point of it, like you won't get as much wind burn or wind damage, especially with agricultural crops, like earlier on, like when the plants maybe 3 or 4 weeks in, they're very prone like to wind damage. It will stunt them. Having hedgerows in place, it actually overall like it increases the yield like by 30%, which is absolutely fantastic. And obviously if you were able to forward on this information to a landowner, he's much more likely then to go ahead with something like that. Yeah, so we're constantly doing that, and obviously I'll keep doing it as much as I can. There will be a point obviously where I'm going to get too old and someone else will have to start doing all the planting. But I think it's absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. You have to have a real good, close relationship with landowners, with farmers, and obviously the general public as well. And with that, beekeepers, of course. Because yes, when I started off, I was completely frowned upon in the beekeeping world. They thought I was absolutely crazy, and I was the one that was going to be spreading disease. I remember going into club meetings like throughout the country, and where I would just listen in, like, and the minute my name was brought up, like, I was just almost like laughing stock. They said, like, oh, and they would be asking me, it's like, oh, how many colonies have you got? Like, especially in the early days, I might have only maybe 30 or 40 colonies. And the minute then once it came to the questions like, oh, so how did your bees do after the winter? And especially in the earlier years, I had almost no losses whatsoever. I was only increasing. And I remember going to one of the clubs. I was there two winters in a row. I had to give a little chat. And they asked me, and in the year one, it was I had 32 colonies, and the following year, I had over 65 colonies. And the guys just looked at me and said, like, oh, the average in the club, they lost about 80% of their bees. And they were all kind of staring at me and said, like, oh, how did you increase so much? And I said, well, I did absolutely nothing at all. I only provide the habitat. And obviously with that, like, obviously we're trying to see like how those bees perform. And later on, I will chat a little bit more about the types of hives that I make. I'm constantly adapting them. I'm constantly taking reference from what I find on the land itself. Like, so I'm constantly watching tree cavities. What do I find? Trying to measure them up, trying to see what are inside, like, and trying to duplicate that in the hive design that I'm doing. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but I think in the long run it will definitely pay off, for sure. So yes, with that, as I said, like a lot of baselining work that I'm doing now, like, because obviously I don't have to put up as many hives anymore. I think I have a fair decent amount out on the land, like, and I'm starting to look now and see what we actually have left. So I actually just drive around, like, walk the land, and actually see then how these proper trees, like obviously with cavities, especially the older trees, I want to get a good understanding of the whole ecology of a tree cavity, because it's quite impressive, like what just takes place. Like, and obviously when we're looking at a tree cavity, there's like a few different factors that can cause, like it's either a human factor or environmental or just wind damage or something, that can cause like a wound on the tree. And obviously once the wound, you have different fungi like that might be able to move in. And I'm trying to figure out now like which fungi are more preferred for bee colonies, because what we find, like white rot, brown rot, you'll have like polypores, like you can see there on the bottom right, the little toadstool. It's like a classic like signal, like is that there obviously is a cavity inside the tree. And every cavity that I come across, like I try to take samples of that, trying to analyze, see what fungus are and what's going on inside that cavity. It's just to get a real good overall picture. Because I note now when I'm putting out my log hives, I find some of the logs do better than others. And obviously I'm trying to figure out, is that to do with the type of wood? Is that to do with the way the hive is made? Maybe I'm kind of manipulating too much when I'm trying to shape these hives as well. So I'm constantly referring back to like an actual situation. And hopefully with that information, then obviously once I get proper data back from it, I could then start to address the situation, like where we would go to county councils or landowners, and where we would say like, right, okay, we have these older trees, like veteran trees, and we really have to start protecting those, because what the kind of common practice over here is like the minute a tree cavity is formed in an older tree, it's classed as unstable and a health hazard. And the first thing they do is to remove it. They'll cut it down. And obviously with that, like if you have a tree that's maybe 150 years old and it just started to form a tree cavity, there's so many opportunities lost there for habitation of not just honeybees, other animals and wildlife that could be living in those cavities, like, and it's just literally just like that, it's gone. So informing, bringing out lots of information like to those state bodies, local government, landowners, supply them with all the information you can, and obviously with the help you can we can give them as well, expertise, because especially the older trees, like there's ways about it to protect them. You can see there right in the middle picture, like is where you had old sycamore trees. There's two there. One is hanging into the left, and one is completely fell over due to poor management, where the landowner obviously didn't know what to do. The trees were that big. We're talking probably at 100, maybe 110 foot tall, 200-300 years old sycamore trees. Those trees could have been well preserved, like for another 50, maybe 100 years, if there maybe was a small bit of crown reduction. Because obviously older trees, like once they get a bit of damage, yes, they might lose the hard rot. The center of the tree, like might be lost through that, like. But if you reduce like the weight and the pressure that's being put up by the tree canopies, you might be able to sustain those trees much longer, because obviously there's much less pressure then on the roots, especially older trees, like they'll have naturally where you're going to get loss of roots constantly. They might die back for whatever cause it is, like just old infection, the vigor might be out of the tree. But if you reduce those canopies, like they can sustain themselves for much longer periods. And obviously then those are the crucial times then where the cavities then can form properly, and you would have a situation like where you have like proper nest sites for animals and bees. And yes, lastly then, plan and plant for the future. That is one of my mottos as well. I'm always trying to plan ahead. Originally, I come from a Dutch background, so I grew up in Holland. I was educated in Holland, and you probably know, like the Dutch are very organized and structured. So I try to do this throughout my work, wherever I can. If I can supply a couple of free trees to people that are maybe taking on a hive, a log hive like Underland, I say like, well, there you go, there's a couple of trees, plant them as well, like, and that'll be the future. Secured like for that little area. Was constantly working on that as well. As I said, I guess this is now started. Like, what is it? We're the second year in now. Because I have so many free living colonies, either in tree cavities or in log house. And because obviously I've done all the groundwork already, like the university in Galway is very interested now to do proper testing. So initially we started off like just to get like a baseline of what we have. So we're focusing on genetic testing. So they want to see like how many of the colonies that I have that I'm monitoring here in the area, how many of those like are pure AMM, and how much of that like is hybridized. So where there's like crossbreeding like in between different subspecies. So yes, from that like I did obviously the original work, all the tree cavity, all the colonies that we have. They're either in tree cavities, wall cavities, roofs, chimneys, and log house. So that's spread out. So there's I think it's 242 odd, 243 odd colonies. I'll have to do the count again now because there was a few casualties, but you're going to get that when you're in those kind of numbers. So yeah, we're constantly working away with that, like back and forth. Like I supply them with information, they supply information to me, so I can ask them now certain questions as well, as I coming across different things, like different observations. But for their point of view, like so they're looking to see like where these wild colonies are present. They want to find out their survival rate. They want to see like if there is local adaptation. What they're going to be doing now is like the sampling they have done with mine. They're going to start comparing those like with managed colonies, and to see like if there's like a higher disease load in either or. So it's continuously there working with that. And obviously I want to get to the last point there where we're going to really start looking into the habitat. So really taking in consideration like not just the tree, but actually the landscape around it as well, because it's going to play a crucial role like for the overall health, because the bees is a part of the ecology like of a tree. I've seen lots of very interesting things like where you would have like a real old tree like with damage where a cavity was formed. Bees moved into it, and what the bees actually did over time, they actually healed the wound properly, and the tree was actually be able to cover up the entrance as well. Obviously, with the detriment like to the colony of bees, like because the entrance disappeared, but the tree is still standing. So I wanted to find out more now what it is that the bees are providing to the tree for their overall health. Like so, it's complete. Like it kind of works together like symbiosis, like in between the two. And then the last thing, like obviously the effects of hybridization is getting studied as well. Like they want to see like if hybridized colony have like a huge effect on local traits, so local genetic bees of AMM. So yeah, that is ongoing as well. Like so, I think now we're going to do the second round of testing in, I think it's in August, where they're going to come out. Like, and I think it's nearly 150 colonies we have to sample. So it's a huge undertaking, but I'm hoping over time, like we'll be able to supply you with data that can be useful even in your situation over there. But this was just some of the results there of some of the samples. So you can see there we ended up, this is one block into the, what was it, the northern part of that yellow area, where we sampled different colonies. And we found, like, of those colonies, we had 28% of hybridization. So we were checking them. Obviously, that's it's mitochondrial DNA. Like, we tested them on morphometrics, and just to see like what the differences are. What's very interesting as well now, because they always said that AMM colonies like would be completely black, but what we're finding now is that we have slight color in our AMM, and they're still coming back as pure AMM, which is very interesting. Like, so obviously, way back they might be some crossover, but it's completely bred out. The color might have stayed behind, but when they're testing for mitochondrial DNA, like they're coming back pure AMM, which is very interesting. Like, so it just means that our native bee, like, it's obviously it's more adaptable to the local area, like in those colonies that have been imported and obviously have cost issues. They just can't survive. Like, their traits disappear in a long period of time. So yes, then on the hives, I said I'll show you a little bit anyway. Maybe you are in a situation. I actually should have asked, like, are you allowed to have colonies without frames?
Yeah, we are. I don't know. Yes, I don't know about other locations, but yes, here. Where I was in Southern California, trying to think. Probably, oh yeah, no. And a lot of locations in the cities, at least, definitely not allowed to have bees in non-frame situations. So no, most likely no. If you're in the city, definitely not. In the rural environments, it's a little bit more flexible.
Right. Okay. Right. But yeah. So the hives that I make, like, all the material, I try as good as I can. Like, all the material that I use for it is sustainably sourced. And what I mean by that, all the logs that I acquire, they're either all trees that unfortunately had to be cut down, like, for health and safety purposes, or they have fallen by wind damage. See, we would have a lot of line planting, old line planting that was done in the 60s, and a lot of those trees, like, they're very shallow rooting because they use a lot of coniferous trees, and over time, like, they just blow over. And I'm lucky enough, like, to be able to get my hands on those trees. So yes, it's a whole different range of trees that I use, but at the moment, like, a lot of it is spruce and pine that I'm using for the logs. So yes, when I'm making the hives, like, I always make sure that I have a minimum of 4 inches. Ideally, I'm using about 6 inches, but the 4 inches is a minimum. What I give my logs, just to give them as much insulation as possible. And I use a very small cavity diameter. I know a lot of people that working with logs, they have much larger cavity diameters. I think they're probably working with maybe 12 inches. I've completely reduced now, and I'm down to 9 inches of a cavity diameter. And this is the reason behind it is this is what I'm finding in our local landscape. I don't come across these huge giant cavities anymore, because obviously the trees are maybe they're not there for it. We don't have big giant ancient trees anymore, but the trees that I do see, like they might be maybe 2 foot, 3 foot in diameter. And the cavities that I find in them, they're all about that kind of a size. So that's why I'm starting to reduce it. And the other reason I'm reducing it, because initially I started off like with probably 10, 11 inches of a diameter. But I found, especially founding swarms that went into the logs, their survival rate wasn't as good. So I started to kind of play with the size of it, like, and I'm reducing it now, and I'm getting to a point where I have very high success rate, like with founding swarms, like that move into fresh new logs. Yes, when I a little bit, but sure, on the design itself, like I use angled entrances, probably about a third from the bottom up. And obviously that is to reduce the chances of any ingress of rainwater. Most of my entrances are all round. I use some slit, but this is just what I've seen over here. Most of my natural knot holes that I find, like they're all kind of a roundy shape. When I would go down the country, I would find more slit entrances where the damage and the cavities that have been formed is due to animal damage, where they've been rubbing up against trees. You get that more kind of like vertical kind of damage, and that over time like turns into a slit entrance. But up here, like I use all rounded because that's what I'm seeing around me. So these are kind of just a couple of pictures like of the different ones that I make. Ideally, I put up the ones on the left there, like the tree conservation log house. So you're talking a log there about 3.5, 4 foot in length. That I just dot around, and you probably have seen lots of research that Tom Seeley did as well. Like, so I initially started off with that in between 4 and 6 meters. I'm reducing it now, like just to make it more comfortable in the summer myself, to make it easier. So I'm probably in around the 4 meter mark where I put most of mine up. Where I don't have the situation to put up logs in trees, if I don't have trees big enough, then I use them on stilts. The stilts that I use, they're probably about 2.5 meters long. So the log itself, like it sits probably about 2.5 meters off the ground. The entrance then maybe another foot above it. And those kind of the two, like they're kind of the more ideal ones. It has like an entrance at the bottom where I can inspect. I have like endoscope cameras where I can go in as well. I can observe bees because it's very fine. Like it's only 5 mil head in it, so I'm actually able to use the camera and actually go in between the comb and inspect how the colony is doing. I'll be able to see like the early signs of swarming, where you see like the drone capping popping out. And obviously that will be a good cue for me as well, like where the colony is at a given time of the year. Then for educational purposes, like I make observation log houses as well. These are more for community groups, schools, even universities as well. Like is where they just want to observe. Like so, it's a horizontal format instead of the vertical. So it's a slightly larger chamber, but the log is much shorter. It's only 2 foot, 2 foot long, the log. Because obviously I'm still trying to keep it at the roughly 35 liter volume mark. And then lastly, then what I do then as well, I started to make, because there was demand for it. Well, I started to get a demand for it from beekeepers. They come up to me and they said, like, oh, we have 3 or 4 colonies of bees, and we would like to give them a bit more suitable home. So where I actually come in and I make these logs, and these logs are big, big, big. We're talking at least probably 3.5 foot in diameter, the logs. But where I then initially, the top section, I cut out a square box. So the beekeeper, he can come in and I can actually transfer his frames directly into it. So he doesn't lose his colonies. He doesn't have to do any cutting or anything like that. He can just grab his frames like with the bees on it and just drop them straight in there. So this might be a good possibilities for yourselves to actually use in your situation if you have to have the criteria that your bees have to be on frames, because with that, like, you can still inspect, but give them a more sustainable home, like, because I have big questions about our box hives. So yeah, this is kind of the way it would, especially that transfer log house. So that's the way it would kind of would look like, where you have your frames in your in the log itself. They're sitting on 6-7 inches of wall minimum. But obviously your log doesn't have to be actually that deep at all, because what I do then after is, the minute I have that initial section cut out like for the bees, I completely taper it away into a small chamber. So what happens is with that is you'll have, say, 8 or 9 of your brood frames that are sitting in the top section, but only maybe the middle section might end up being used like for brooding over time, because there is where they have the depth, and that's where you can get the proper vertical alignment again. Because I think it's absolutely crucial that bees have that possibility of the vertical movement. I think it's going to be one of the key things, like, is for proper survival rate of colonies, that vertical movement inside the hive. But yeah, so this is what it kind of would look like, and obviously with different types of hive, I have different possibilities as well. So these ones is where I have vertical logs like that. I have observation doors on the side, just for me, for scientific purposes. It's where we can take small samples of comb from them, and they can analyze the comb then. And that's kind of the way that I'm, but mainly, like, it's the 3 conservation hive and elevated log hive that I use. The other ones are more for observation and beekeeping purposes. So what do I come across? Like, so I see quite a few things, like, during my travels, I find that while we're looking at proper wild nest, like, you'll see comb being constructed in lots of different types of ways. I'm trying to observe as much. I ask lots of questions, and I'm starting to toy with ideas, like, where there's a certain reason that bees build in certain directions. From the initial kind of testing that I did, like, where I got the feedback back, what was AMM and what wasn't AMM, what was hybridized, I noticed there was, like, a distinct difference in the way the 2 types build their comb. I found a lot of the AMM colonies, they use the comb as screens for the entrances. So they actually would build, like, on the 90-degree of an entrance. And obviously I'm doing more and more observation on that, like, to see. But yes, it's definitely there's something there, like, and obviously I have to do a bit more research on it. But I find, like, there's a good difference there, and obviously there must be a reason for it, that they're using it for extra thermal regulation. They might use it for protection, especially if you have larger entrances in those 3 cavities. They're using this just the comb, like, as a proper door, which is really fascinating to watch. We came across as well, like, and probably it's one of the few and first time, I haven't seen it anywhere else anyway, where we actually see that the bees are using tools to construct doors. And with that, I mean, like, where they go in and use needles, use leaves that they suspend from the top of the entrance, and then use that as a framework to build propolis doors with them. So yes, very, very interesting, like to see. What else do we see? Like obviously in the beekeeping world, especially the talk of wax moth and mice problems. I don't see it being an issue at all. I think there has to be that interaction in between the two, especially when you have bees like living in a wild situation. You'll have obviously continuous occupation where bees like maybe sitting on the same pieces of comb for 5 or 6 years. But what I noticed then all of a sudden they'll abandon one piece of comb completely, and the wax moth comes in and completely eradicates that section, and that allows then the bees to come back in and actually rebuild fresh new comb with it, which is very interesting. Mice problems, yes, you're going to get it. You can see there in the top picture is a perfect example. The picture on the left was taken in December time, where the colony was moved up, like, and obviously you can see the direction of the comb was completely different, where they first aligned it with the entrance itself. So they actually were building in a straight line of it. That colony there regressed, and in the winter months they're higher up in the chamber. Mice got in, they actually completely devoured the whole bottom section of the comb. And then the following spring you'll see the brand new comb being built, and the bees are completely happy out. So I think there's like a happy medium where, especially when you have that vertical movement available, yes, there might be some damage from mice, but I think it's completely, we're seeing it here in the natural situation. But when we're looking at, say, a format where you have box hives, the bees don't have that possibility to move away from, obviously, from this pest, to allow the mice like to eat a piece of comb, because obviously once the mouse moves in, he's in the middle of the bees. And obviously this here, like where they have maybe 2 or 3 foot of comb, they can lose that bottom section, and then year in, year out, they can regenerate that, and obviously have that possibility of new comb, fresh new comb, like all the time. Yeah, so what I see as well, like, and that obviously comes back like with that the testing as well, is where I even have colonies that are hybridized through what I found, and through the testing, that I noticed like throughout the season, I'll see visual differences in appearance, especially in the winter months. Most of those hybridized colonies appear to be all black, just visually appear all black. But in the summer months, I noticed that there's much more banding in the bees that are actually actively foraging. And what it means, that because obviously the reason those bees were imported originally, like the Carnica type and Italian bees, they were imported like for their purpose of that they're very good foragers. They're able to bring in large quantities like of nectar in a very short period of time. And I'm wondering if there is something there that either subconsciously or that the colony knows that in certain times of the year, this type of trait that is present, that has been used for those purposes, like that they would actually increase the numbers of those types of traits where you're actually going to see that visual banding, and that it actually refers back like that colony is able to collect large quantities like of nectar, like in maybe only a week. I've seen colonies like literally filling 5-6 sheets of comb in the space of a week, and we're talking like 3 foot of comb, like each section. They literally rammed it packed. They were empty before, and literally a week later they were full. So it's definitely interesting to see, and obviously there's something there that we haven't got the full understanding of. Like we're only just guessing at the moment, but there's definitely there something that somehow those hybridized colonies use certain traits like at different types of the year. Because our survival rate, like especially of pure AMM, they're very frugal and they're able to sustain themselves like on a very small area. I have seen colonies like that maybe, what are we talking, like a large softball, very small, like a cluster in the winter, and they absolutely thrive coming out in the spring. If you would have that in an ordinary box hive, that colony's dead. Absolutely, it won't survive the winter. No chance, unless you're constantly in them and feeding them and nurturing them, trying to do your best. But these bees are able to sustain themselves like on a very small area. Initially, when I started off, I did some testing like with consumption in the log hives, and I compared it with ordinary box hives. And where I did the comparison, I just took a weight, bees going into the winter, and then took the weight again of the whole hive like in springtime again, and did the same thing with box hive, literally within the same area, and it's nearly a third less what the bees in the log hive use than what they use in the box hive. It's a huge reduction. Like they're much more frugal when they have like a proper housing around them, which is quite interesting. Adaptations and entrances. I don't know if you notice it much like in the hives that you use, but what I found is that initially when I started to make my log hives, I just would literally bore a hole straight through and thinking this would be enough. But initially what the bees still start doing straight away is they get rid of all the sharp edges. Everything. They literally chew them away. Huge, rounded, curved edges all the way around. Like, so I walked away from that. Obviously, seeing that behavior, like obviously I knew straight away, right, obviously they don't want this. So I started to adjust it. And then when I actually started looking back into natural cavities, you'll never see a sharp edge in it. No 90-degree angles anywhere. It's all nice rounded curves. And obviously that reassured me then obviously that initially what I was doing was completely wrong, and obviously I needed to address it. Because I don't know if you've ever looked at the proper tree cavity, the way it rots away, like it would eat the fungus, that it would eat the hardwood, and there might be a tiny little bit of hardwood that goes into a side branch. So while it's eating the hardwood away, it would gently curve away as well, like the fungus would eat the dead wood first, and you'll get those kind of gentle curves where it then moves into a knot hole. And obviously that's what I'm covering now as well. Like, so I'm trying to change that completely. And I think it should be definitely something that could be addressed as well in ordinary box hives. And it doesn't take much like to change that. I think anyway, but maybe some people might think differently. Once I started to reduce my colonies down, initially started off with about 40 liters. I have reduced the volume now of my hives down to 34. And what I found with them is, and I said it earlier on already, is that the survival rate of founding swarms has increased. I have a better rate than I had before. I also found that those colonies are able to build up much quicker with that smaller volume. And long-term survival. I have colonies sitting up there now. They're 7 years old and they're still flying. Absolutely doing well. No problems whatsoever. Very interesting thing as well, is what I found is when you have colonies coming in, is that the propolis doesn't get applied all over. It actually is applied as the comb is being built. So you can see there a real nice picture there on the bottom left is where you have the comb just started to build, like, and then you get that discoloration in the wood, and that's propolis, like, and they're only applying it on the surfaces. is where they're walking. And after that, they don't really care. Well, what looks to me like they don't really care about it because they're not there. So there's no chances of them actually picking up any bacteria or any kind of issues. But obviously, as the colony then grows, that propolis barrier like grows as well. Like, and eventually, what they'll do is they'll literally completely encase themselves. So you can see there a beautiful picture there of colony there, the bottom middle picture is where they literally had the ceiling, all the side walls, and the complete floor completely propolized. And it's absolutely fascinating to watch. Absolutely fascinating again. So the sheer amount of propolis and even the color of some of it, you can see it there in the top left picture. You can have nice brown, yellow, red, even green propolis. You can even see there in that picture there, there's little bits of green in it as well. So this is going to be another question that I'm going to have. Like, I want to find out exactly the properties of those different types of propolis that has been collected. If there's any one better than other ones. So that's another question I'm going to be throwing at the research team in the university and see what comes back from that. So yeah, with that. Oh, and lastly, then yes, very interestingly, when I put up my house, I normally bait them. So I put tiny little bits of bait comb in, just to attract, obviously, just to make the bees believe like that it's there was bees in there before. If there's like scout bees around in the area, like, and they come and investigate. But what I found, literally probably within half an hour of the swarm moving in, the first thing they did, they got rid of the comb that I put in there because it's alien to them, and they dispose it. But because they're not able to carry it outside the entrance, it ends up on the floor. But what's really interesting is that, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, they're able to manage to lift those pieces of comb off the ground. They build pillars because obviously they still need to be able to clean this piece of comb, like, because it's a health hazard for the colony. But what to do, like, they actually elevate the whole piece of comb. They lift it up, build pillars so they can actually walk underneath it. You can see there really nicely on the bottom right where you see those little pillars built, and that piece would have just fallen on the ground, obviously. And if they didn't do anything with it, like, it would start to fester underneath, like. So you can just shows you like how important it is for those bees, like, to be able to access every bit of surface of that internal structure of the hive, which is fascinating to watch. And with that, thank you very much. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Okay, well, I have like, I won't ask all my questions, but ladies, do you have anything you want to ask first or comment on before I?
I do.
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much. I learned a ton, to say the least. I'm very, 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 very new at this. But where I live in Southern California, there are a few trees on the property that I live that have these cavities, and I do notice that around the trees there tends to be a lot of bee activity. And I haven't gone up or taken a look inside the cavities, but it got me thinking if there was anything that I could do to help, or if I should just stay away, just to help with the I guess the environment to be more conducive to them moving in, perhaps, if that's what they wanted to do. I don't know.
Right. Okay. So if you notice, and obviously, is it certain time of the year that you notice it?
Yeah, the spring and summer.
Right. Okay. So obviously, what they're doing there, and obviously they're investigating those cavities. Those are probably scout bees that are going about, and maybe those trees are maybe not at the right age yet, and the cavities are not sizable enough for the colony to take up. So I don't know if they're those trees on your own property or neighboring properties. The best thing what you could do is to speak with whoever owns those trees and obviously explain to them, right, maybe in years to come, and we might be able to talk here 40, 50 years, but that they're not afraid like of maintaining those trees on the property, even though there might be cavities in it. The research is there, like it can show that a tree can lose up to 40% of its hardwood and it's still perfectly fine. And we're talking, especially with all the trees, like you're talking like a huge quantity like of wood that has to be eaten away like before the tree actually starts to become slightly more unstable. But even then, like if more gets eaten away, you can still then with proper tree care, that tree can sustain itself for a long, long time.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have something to add?
Well, sort of. I kind of have a question, I guess. Like, I have some logs that, like, I'm also actually brand new at beekeeping. I haven't even got my first hive yet, so that like very new. But a couple like last year when I had started thinking about doing the bees, I got a couple logs. And I don't know if they are the right dimensions or if they would be interested in them. But I've kept them like in my husband's in his metal shack, so like they're dry, they're like in good shape. But if I put them like in where I near my apiary, like probably next year if the hive swarms, like is it okay to just see if they
Are these logs hollow?
yeah.
Okay. So you can do a rough calculation. So whatever, I don't know, the size of the logs. If you take the area of both sides, like so the both circles on either side of the cavity. So if your log is say in that direction, yes, a horizontal direction, you get the area of the circle here and on the other side, and you take a happy medium. Right? So you get the area of that, and then you just multiply that by the length of the log. And that will give you a rough idea like of what the volume is of that log.
And how long does it like need to be, or will the bees be able to assess themselves if it's
well what I find is like obviously they need something in between 30 and 40 liters, give or take, to sustain themselves. And obviously it's going to be regional dependent as well. Initially when I started off, it was 40 liters I started off with. I'm reducing it, and probably in years to come I might even reduce it down to 30 liters, because I'm finding that the bees that we have here sustain themselves on very small brood nests. In summer and winter time they might be only sitting on 5 or 6 pieces of comb with brood on it. So obviously you're going to have to kind of assess that yourself. Like once you get into the beekeeping, once you get your bees, like, but what you're going to find straight away is like, I don't know what kind of a hive type that you're thinking of getting. If it's like a Langstroth or that kind of like a box hive, you'll find very quickly once you do your first inspection, after you have your first season over and you do your first inspection in spring. When you open that hive, what you're going to see is like a classic picture where you have like you're looking at all the frames completely boxed, and there might be 10 or 12 frames in it, but those bees are only going to be sitting on about 4 or 5 frames right in the middle. And they're sitting in kind of like more like an elongated shape. It might be circle from the top down, but if you actually look horizontal at them. It's more like an elongated shape,
Mm.
the way they're sitting. And obviously that's why when you're referred that back like to a tree cavity, is when you have a log that is only maybe 6 comb wide, 6 pieces of comb. So each comb is on average is about what 34, 35 mil space wise. So when you multiply that with a couple of bit of bead spaces, you're in around the 9 inches there, give or take 8, 9 inches. So in the winter months, those bees literally sitting from wall to wall. So they have absolutely no cold spaces around them anymore. They're completely protected. They're sitting up against that propolis envelope, completely sterilizing everything. So those bees are happy out. When you're looking into a standard box format, you have 11, 12, I don't know how many frames in your hives?
10, usually 8 or 10.
10, right, okay, right. So you have, on the outside, you have 2 solid frames that in the winter months, they're not going to be occupied. They might be occupied, like if they start looking for food, but it means then that cluster has to break up and move across. And obviously that causes other issues as well. I remember there's a friend of mine, like he's over there as well, and he actually completely changed it where he just halved the Langstroth hives, and he's only working on 5 frames, and he says he has huge success with them. Like he just did it for like a little project for over the space of what was it, 5 6 years. Started off with 2 little hives, changed the design. His floors, what did he do? Yeah, he reduced the size. He made the roofs and the floor identical so you can swap them about to clean them as well. And he was able to, within a couple of years, he went from a couple of colonies like to 200. Absolutely no problem at all. Like, and it's just because of that vertical movement instead of horizontal. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Canada, so it's even colder here in the winter too. So
Yeah, sure will be. I actually, there's a guy up to some kind of like nature reserve. I actually taught a guy there how to make hives. So he made an adaptation because your regulations up there, you still have to have framed hives. So
I think so.
he made an adaptation where he actually took the original Langstroth frames and he actually turned them sideways. And then that's the way we designed the hive, like to fit them into the logs. So you can still do the inspections that way if a person comes about, but he still has that vertical format. It's absolutely crucial for them to be able to migrate throughout the season. Absolutely crucial.
Okay. I haven't got a big enough piece of paper.
I mean, the conversation is it's so important for every beekeeper to be exposed to this, in my opinion. I mean, just like with everything in terms of, and I speak to agriculture a lot because that's what I'm, kind of like enmeshed in, but everything is so driven, by production and quota and efficiency. And we talk about this a lot in this class, like the putting these values on the bees and other livestock, quote unquote, right? People call the bees here livestock, just like sheep or cows or goats. And I think so many of us who are called to work with bees are navigating this space between really wanting to develop like a deep relationship with the hive and also be gifted some of the medicine that the bees can share with us. And in the same respect, do it in a way that is the best for them at the same time. And everything you've shared today reminds me of, how I really feel about working with bees and and all of the shortcomings of modern beekeeping. And for me myself, like I'm continuing to evolve in my journey of bees, you know. Will I totally get rid of the Langstroth box this year? Maybe. I'm feeling more inclined to, especially after the losses that I had this winter. And, you know, in like a greater conversation about us as stewards of not just like being beekeepers or bee guardians, but like stewards of the greater ecosystem. And I'm rambling because I'm just feeling very just very touched by what you presented, and also want to share that a lot of us talk about, and myself included, talk a lot about forage for bees, like flower, what can you plant, but the trees as kind of like the keystone species to an environment is also kind of missing from my communication, and I'm just noticing like things that I can be more aware of, and how can folks in the urban environment, like some of my students and even myself, that I'm stewarding like a portion of a forest here, how do we take more responsibility for the trees, and not just, you know, be oblivious to their life cycle.
It plays absolutely a huge role, because even if you look on a forest level, yes, if you have one mature tree that flowers, that nearly equates as a whole meadow. One tree.
Wow.
So if you're in a more, if your parcel of land like is smaller, that you don't have the facility like to have like big meadows to be able to sustain multiple species, a couple of trees, yes, and you let them grow and you let them thrive, like, and they flower away, they supply a huge amount, and it's crucial forage as well, especially when it comes to the swarming season. Well, over here anyway, because it's probably the only food that's available for them.
Right.
Now, like, we got like sycamore coming in, hawthorn trees, horse chestnuts, those are all flowering now, and those are all the crucial ones where the colony stocks up completely and obviously gets to the point then that they have enough food that they can swarm out. If you look in the fields now here, there's absolutely no wildflowers. The wildflower is for the summer months. It's where you have clover in there and all different types of smaller plants like to supply lots of food. But earlier on in the year, it's just all trees, and obviously that's why it's key to have that as part of your whole more plan, like in supplying forage. Because a lot of people all talk about, oh yeah, we have to plant more flowers and flowers. So you can plant a lot of flowers to sustain one colony of bees. And obviously it's a long term. It definitely is, like, to see what I'm doing, like it's a short term solution.
Right.
But the short term, what I'm saying, like we're talking like 100, 200 years.
Yeah.
That's the solution, because that's how long it's going to take for us to grow proper trees again.
Right.
Obviously, I'm never going to see it, but I can make a start with it and trying to inspire as many people as I can, like to plant. Even if every person planted one tree every year, we wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty shocked and horrified to hear your 1% of the native woodland left there. I mean, I don't know. I actually don't know what the percentage is here, but my husband is from Romania, and he also talks about how decimated the Romanian forests are. And I just,
Even worse at the moment.
yeah,
They're cutting it all away at the moment. I don't know if he's been there lately, but it's not good at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that really moved me is how your commitment to really being like at the personal level with people like landowners and farmers. I think that that's truly the way in which a lot of change can really happen at that grassroots level. I was also really excited to hear about this, and correct me if I misunderstood, but you guys have awards in towns for like biodiversity and landscaping. Like, that's incredible.
On a national level.
And so that was initiated by the government there, or how was that?
No, it wouldn't be the government. No, it was initiated by the Biodiversity Data Center. I think they initiated it off, and then it kind of just got taken on like by like a voluntary group. Like they really kicked it off, and it's, I think, see, a lot of people, like, they're all saying nowadays, like, oh yeah, when your kid is going into a competition, everyone should walk away with a medal. I think it's completely wrong. Like, and you have to have that bit of a drive, like, to be slightly better than the next person.
Yeah.
Because it's healthy to have that, and obviously because people then strive more. If they all walk away with a medal, like, then people go, oh yeah, we still did okay, we got our medal, and you're not going to get that drive in there. Like, so I think it's really good to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, and I'm like, my brain was kind of firing, like, how can I initiate something like that here? Healthy competition to be like, restoring the environment. So
the place that you live, is it a big place?
No, there's 15,000 people that live in the town that I'm, next to. So
why don't you do it on the garden level?
Yeah, good.
They do it here in the town, where the local town, like, they do like a competition.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have different categories. People can put themselves in, even for the best lawn, or for the tidiest garden, or biodiversity, whatever it is. Like, and they can put in, and then they get put into different categories, and within that category, then they pick the winners.
I love that. I'm going to do that. I feel very excited to do that. But tell me about, like, your how does it affect you emotionally to be utilizing so much of your time that you're giving for free to support these farmers and landowners? You were talking about, the hedgerows and, planting in new rows and things like that. I mean, do you find that you have enough, like, fire within you to keep doing that, or do you feel burnt out at times?
Of course, yeah. There's times, obviously, because especially with the material that I use, the logs, they're definitely not light. So it comes with a hazard. So my back is definitely not the best anymore as it was, but regardless, I just have to come up with solutions for those issues as I come across them, and I'll find ways. Yes, definitely. But what I'm trying to do now, obviously, because I might get 2 decades that I'll be able to do this work properly, and obviously I'm going to slow down anyway. But if we have already everything initiated and everything in place, then it's more management then afterwards, and obviously education purpose and the research side of it, like, to be able to supply conventional beekeeping world, like, with the information they are looking for. So I'm trying to do as much as I can at the moment. But what I talked about just before we started our meeting, like, about the pilot project, we're trying to get other people on board as well, like, because at the moment there's very few of us actually doing the work. I'm in Ireland. I'm the only one. In the UK, a good friend of mine, he's doing it, Matt Somerville, and then you have another guy in France, and that's kind of the three. We're kind of the three big ones, like, that are putting lots of them out. Yeah, you get an odd one here and there, like they might do a couple here and there, but it's not on a larger level, because what we're trying to do, like, is with the hive, like, is use them as a symbol, is to raise awareness, like, to people, like, right, we're putting this up because the situation like in your local landscape is absolutely dire. It's completely out of balance, like, because if you have like a very balanced woodland forest of those trees, like you're going to have trees with naturally with cavities in it, because you should have like a whole range of ages within that woodland. If they're not there, and then you have to start putting these things up, and that's why we're using the haze now. Where okay, we're making them certain haze, like we're making them very pretty, and people just obviously the talking point. If we're going to put information alongside them and say, right, these logs shouldn't be there at all, like, but we're putting them as a necessity because your woodland is out of balance, like, and obviously that then makes a good point as well to drag it into educational purposes and more proper management purposes as well, like where you can start getting the local community involved, like in helping out, like planting more trees, whatever it is, like managing the land, looking after it properly.
Okay, I just have a few more questions if you're okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where are beekeepers importing bees from?
All over the world.
Huh? From all over?
Yeah, the Russian bees, Italian,
Okay.
where they're coming from, everywhere. Yeah, I tested one of my colonies. It's probably about an hour away from here, and on visually, on paper, it was the blackest colony in the country. Genetically, it was the most hybridized. It had 6 different strains of bees in it.
Wow.
In the one colony, yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then what's your opinion on like horizontal hives or top bar hives? Do you have an opinion?
I kind of addressed it already, didn't I?
Yeah.
I think it's crucial. And when I'm observing trees like in natural situations, well, semi-natural when they're in hedgerows but with cavities in them, I do come across cavities like that are on a horizontal format, and I never find bees in them. Never find. I always find them in the vertical format because I think it's absolute necessity for them to be able to regulate the temperature properly. But inside the hive, like if you have a horizontal format, you don't get the same regulation at all. Unfortunately, I know. Yes, when you're in a different climate, because obviously originally, like they came out of Africa,
right?
Different climate there. Yes, they mightn't need that extra regulation where they have to keep certain areas warm because it's always warm there.
Yeah.
And obviously, it might be more beneficial there to have those kind of type of hives.
Right.
But I think they got adapted over time because I think like yes, you have natural comb building, which is all well and good, like, but you can slightly do that as a different as well, like with a I don't know if you've heard of those, like the Einrhomboides. They're like a single box hive, but it's more a vertical format again. But you still allow a natural comb to be built, like a Lane's type of hive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like I don't know if I heard you correctly, but you were saying that there was like a native bee in Ireland, a native honeybee.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and what you are trying to do is help that bee in particular to be as healthy and is possible.
Yeah. So we're trying to protect that strain because a lot of testing was done in previous years, and they're saying that the AMM, like the Apis mellifera that we have here, the pockets, they're completely unique to any of AMM anywhere else in Europe.
Wow, that's and so when
it's what it means like is our AMM like is locally adapted.
Right.
Yeah.
So then what you're doing when you're saying you're testing, you're seeing how some of the native bees have like interbred with other varieties of bees. So you're looking kind of for like the variants and that, so to speak. And so I don't know if you said it or not, but like, do you find like the other bees that come from other places are a threat to the native bee in?
Yeah, well, what's going to happen is what we're seeing on the ground is that obviously you're starting to losing some of those adaptable traits. You might have small
The
colonies.
more they
I
interbreed?
have a cluster up here, probably about 20 miles away. I have a cluster of 5, well, 5 now, but it was 6. I have a cluster of 6 colonies, and those are the only 6 with a completely genetic line that you won't find anywhere else in the country. So they have completely adjusted themselves to that niche pocket in the country.
Right.
If you have a colony that breeds with those, like a different type of subspecies, some of those traits will disappear. And obviously the damage one round of breeding can do, like, can be actually detrimental to a little pocket like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I get, and I don't know if there's any native honeybees, in
America, no.
No.
Or in Canada, oh no, not I don't know.
No. Okay. But then what we hear is the different sort of argument is that the honeybees are threatening the native bees. They're not honeybees, but they're native to the regions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the breeding that's the problem then in your mind, less more than like access to resources.
Well, that's conversation that you're referring to, like, is that honeybees are causing a threat. It's because of certain formats of keeping those bees. I don't know what kind of commercial beekeeping. Yes, that's guaranteed is going to be a threat on local populations of wild bees. 100%. Like a lot of the study that's done over here, they're all done in an urban area where they see like is large scale beekeeping, even though like it might be businesses maybe only have 1 or 2 colonies on the roof or something in a urban setting. But if you're looking on like a large town, you could easily end up like with 5,000-6,000 colonies in a very small area. Those have huge impacts, absolutely, because the way you have to look at it, if you have a piece of landscape, if you calculate every single tree that flowers, every shrub that flowers, every flower that flowers, it's going to provide X amount of nectar, right? And then if you're coming in, then right, you have your wild population of bees within that, right? All your bumblebees, solitary bees, wherever hoverflies, whatever it is, like they're going to be there. They're going to need nutrition from that. They're going to take X amount from that nectar supply. Mm-hmm. And then it's up to us then to decide, right, if we're going to come in there on a commercial format and we're going to plunk in 50 hives in that same area, yeah, you're automatically going to have pressure. Right. Straight away, because the amount of nectar doesn't change. And that's why you hear so many people like saying, oh, I had to feed my bees in springtime because they were nearly dying. Because those bees didn't have the possibility to collect enough food to sustain themselves.
Right.
So that's why it's so important, like for any beekeeper, when he goes into beekeeping, to do proper baselining first, like to have a real good look what's around you already. Who has bees already, and am I actually able to sustain 2 or 3 colonies of bees in my garden? Because if you have neighbors like they all keep bees, then you really want to start asking the question, like maybe you should go to them first and say, right, how are your colonies faring out? Like, are they surviving or what's happening? If you're here and they have problems already, then there's definitely has to be a question to be asked, like, is how far you can go with it. Mm-hmm. I know it's not a thing that people like to hear about, but yeah, if we really want to do it for the bees, then it's something that has to be addressed, like, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely, like in my area, like there's definitely not like an over crowding of people doing bees. Like it's very, I would say, stark. I know of one lady who has like asked a few people around, like I live very rural, and she keeps some of her hives at like I know of 2 places where she has like a hive that she's put, but there's like a lot of fields and trees, and not very many people doing like backyard bees. And so I was curious because originally when I thought about doing bees, I was thinking to try to create like habitat for native bees. But then realized that they do it quite differently. They don't really create hives. They burrow, I guess, more under the ground, and it's a whole different system. And plus I make a lot of like herbal remedies and kombucha with honey and salves with wax. So then I was like, oh, maybe to have honeybees makes a lot of sense. And so I don't know if it's so much of a threat in my immediate area, but also want to be cognizant of like, yeah, just the promotion of, and then how to navigate conversations, because I feel like those conversations spread like wildfire, and then I don't know how to respond. Like, what's the threat to the native bee and why? Because usually it's people that are uninformed or ignorant that are just heard on a whim, and then they're accusing, or they're like, right, calling people out. And then I want to know, kind of at least start to know how to like respond in an educated way, so that, yeah. And like, so what you just said was really helpful. So it definitely is resource based. And then also if it's about understanding the geographical area that you're in and doing
every area is going to be different, I guess. So whatever area you're in, if you're saying you're going to have one lady within the vicinity, I'm going to nearly say like, yeah, probably it's not going to be an issue unless the landscape is really poor. But if you have a good variety of trees and hedgerows and maybe bits of woodland or something,
yes,
you're probably not going to have
on
any
our
issue at
land,
all.
all of those things.
See at the moment, like, well, what I've read so far anyway is any studies done in a rural setting is data deficient on honeybees having an impact on wild bees. The studies that are only done is on an urban setting.
Right. Okay.
Like in a very highly built up area, yes, and they guaranteed they have a huge impact. They had this long drive like for years there, where they did all this greenwashing, where it was kind of hip like for businesses to take on beehives under for their green certs and all that kind of crack. And those bees are still there, like, and they cause an absolute havoc because no one really watches them. They might have a beekeeper that comes in maybe once or twice a year, like to see if the colony is still okay. He gets paid for it, but the company that has no interest in it at all. And those, yes, the studies done there, and they're having detrimental impact. Absolutely.
Okay, it's very interesting. Because it is one of those things of like, promoting something that hoping that people think they're doing well. Most they say most sort of evil is done with good intentions. So it's interesting to kind of understand that on a deeper level.
See, the best thing for you to do, like if you're afraid of having those conversations, do your research. So go around the area, check who's keeping bees, talk to them, see how they're doing. How their bees are faring out, then have a good look like on what forages around you, and then straight away you can, when the person asks like, oh, you're causing loads of impact like on our local bees, and then you can say straight away, well, I've only one neighbor that keeps a couple of hives here and there. If I drop on there, it's going to be absolutely no issue at all, like, because we have so much forage available.
And it's like when I'm in the garden in the summer, there's like at least 3 different types of bee that comes in the yard. So and it'll be interesting once I get my hive to then see what the difference like the different bees that I'm seeing. Because like a bumblebee, and then there's like the honeybee, and then I think there's more of like a wild bee. But yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I know you'll find as well, like the minute you put one hive in your own garden, I'd say 9 out of the 10 times, like those bees won't be in your garden at all.
Who's gonna go?
They're gonna go away, yes. They're gonna go where there's lots of food available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was, for me, really powerful, and I'm really grateful for the work that you are doing, even though you're very far away. I know that you're making a huge impact, even if you don't see it in your lifetime. And I hope that you feel you have things in your life to like reinvigorate you, and also see like moments of appreciation for the work you're doing, because it is really powerful. So thank you so much. And thank you for
No worries
taking
at
the
all.
time to share with us. How can all of us find you? I'll put the social media on there, but how can we donate to your research and conservation?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I had something on my, see, I'm not very technical, technology
Yeah.
based. I had something on the page and on the website, and
Okay.
for some reason I made it disappear.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I just I can give you, if you wanted to donate something towards the work, like I can give you like a bank detail. You can just drop something in there, or
Okay.
I don't know what else would be handy.
Can you email it to me and I'll share
Can
it with
surely,
you?
yes, yeah, can surely.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Please stay in touch. We'll check in with you again maybe at the end of the year and just see how your hives did throughout the summer. It'd be kind of fun to hear about that if you're open to sharing with us.
Well, just to let you know from
Yeah.
survival, because I did all my checks now.
Mhm.
Out of say 250 colonies, I lost 2. One was human cause, and the other one was old age of 3. The
Amazing.
3 was that old, and it just fell apart.
Wow.
So
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you again.
yeah, no
Okay.
worries.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
And both of you, the best of luck as well with your your journey in beekeeping. And if you have any questions at all, like don't hesitate just to fire off an email or something, or contact me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever it is.
Thank you so much. I just found you on Instagram. So yeah, thanks so much.
No worries.
Ladies, I'm going to chat with you for a few minutes before we depart. Thanks,
Mhm.
Mick. See you soon.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Thanks for being here today.
Yes. It was hard to get out of the garden, but it was worth it.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up for today. I spoke with both of you actually on the phone and via Zoom for a check-in, so I don't have anything else I want to share. But I will see you. Oh, if you can't make the next session on the 14th, I think it is, or the 13th.
Yeah, the 14th, Mother's Day.
Yeah, Mother's Day. If you're celebrating as a mother, as you should be, please enjoy your day, and you can watch the recording. And if I don't see you on that day, then I'll see you in June.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It's like we're probably gonna go to our fish camp on Mother's Day because it's been our tradition since like my 10-year-old was born.
Good.
But the weather is no good, then
Okay.
depends.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, have a great weekend,
Thank
ladies.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.